Android Wear. Is fashion what's holding back wearable tech?
And curved screens, are they more than a novelty?
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, joined here by a man clearly overdue for one of the government's newfangled honours, Dame Adam Turner.
Thank you very much.
Your Majesty, what's happening in tech news?
Google Glass is on a quest to look cool, signing a deal with the company behind Ray-Ban and Oakley's. Google says that they'll bring design and manufacturing expertise into the mix. Hopefully they'll also help make glasses look a little bit sexier than the clunky things we've seen from Google so far.
Just about a year after it launched its Twitter music service, Twitter's announced that it's killing its Twitter music service. First of all, it's pulled the iOS app, and then the actual service itself will cease on April 18th. It seems as though people are pretty happy to bitch about politics or TV shows on Twitter, but not so much to join in community sing-alongs. If you've ever heard me singing, you know there's a good reason why.
Australian internet service provider TPG has gone live with fibre to the basement trials, setting up trials in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane. The Australian Consumer Watchdog says it approves of the competition against the national broadband network, although the government still may close the loophole that lets TPG deploy competing infrastructure.
The latest Angry Birds game, Angry Birds Epic, has soft launched in Australia, New Zealand and Canada. Angry Birds Epic is a turn-based combat game, so it's a bit like taking an old-school Japanese RPG, removing all the story that made you want to play it in the first place, and adding in quite a few in-app purchases. Hang on, a correction there. A lot of in-app purchases. I'm starting to understand why those aliens are so irritable. Adam, you've spent a lot of time staring intently at curved screens recently. Are they worth getting excited about?
I don't really think so. Some of the big, gorgeous curved screens I saw at CES in Las Vegas, yes. I mean, these things will set you back, six figures, but in return, you get a television that's 105 inches wide, and it's just a beautiful curve in it, and you stand a few feet away from it, and really does have that immersive feel. But
How many people, do you know who've got a 105-inch curved wall?
No. My theory is that you buy 5 of them and then you build a house out of them, and then you just live in it forever. You don't put a door in it, you never leave, because you're surrounded by curved televisions. Why would you leave? But for everybody else, I just don't see how practical this thing is. But so, big television, come home, tell everybody about it. Oh, this thing's amazing. Then I borrow a curved television to review. This thing is 55 inches and it's 16 by 9 rather than the super wide 21 by 9 I saw in Vegas, and I was very underwhelmed. I'm glad that I saw what it can do in Vegas, or else I would just think that curve was a total write-off in the lounge room. You just had to get so close to it before you could see the curve, and even then it didn't seem to add anything. It just wasn't adding anything to the picture. I don't see why you want to spend extra money to bend your screen.
Yeah, I mean, the curved TVs I've looked at, design-wise, and this includes like the 55 and looking at images of the bigger models. Design-wise, yeah, there's something kind of sexy about them.
Oh yeah, it's a fashion statement.
It's an absolute fashion statement. But once you combine the fact that the viewing angle on these things, it's really well suited to a single viewer. So, if you are a bachelor living by yourself with a lot of disposable income, then great. If you've got a family or you ever want to have, friends around, then it's a little bit less compelling, I think. But this is also tech that's not just in big screens anymore. We're starting to see it in a lot of smaller screen devices as well.
Yeah, and again, LG and Samsung have got the curved televisions, but LG's also come out with the curved phone. Now, this has actually got more of a curve than the television. I was actually surprised at how subtle the curve is on that 55-inch television. The edge of the screens were only about a centimetre further ahead than the middle. So the curve was practically not there. The phones are a lot more pronounced. You can see that curve. You can feel that curve if you want to hold the phone here to watch a movie, and most people don't really want to do that. When I turn the phone on its side to read text going up and down, it felt a bit weird. It's like that distorted feeling you get where you think the ground's moving, but it's not.
So what you're really trying to say here is that it had a learning curve.
Not just a learning curve, but almost like, when the Star Wars text goes off the screen, it kind of felt like that as the text was curving around, and it just didn't feel natural to me. If you're the kind of person who's going to sit there all day and watch a movie on your phone, you'll feel the curve more than you might on a standard curved television in your lounge room. But every time you go to use it as a phone, as anything other than watching video, I don't think the curve brings anything to it. If anything, it detracts from it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I agree. I've had a play with the same phone, and it's an interesting form factor. It's a kind of an interesting idea. And certainly if you want a phone that people are going to go, oh wow, that looks a bit different, then
again,
great.
A fashion statement.
A fashion statement, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, the curve didn't really do a whole lot for me. I think it's even harder to argue that you get that kind of visual curved sweet spot with something that's that small as well.
Yeah.
And of course, it's never going to fit all that well into your pants pocket.
No, but the frustrating thing probably more about the televisions than the phones is the phones. There are plenty of great Android phones. If you want a good Android phone but don't want curved, that's fine. There are other phones. Even LG has pretty much the similar thing that's not curved. The problem with curved televisions is all the new OLED televisions are curved televisions. Now, OLED's sort of like the successor to plasma. If you think that contrast and great deep blacks are the best thing about picture quality, then OLED is what you want to check out.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, for now, the Samsung OLED televisions and the LG OLED televisions are the curved televisions. If you want OLED, you have to have curved. If you want curved, you have to have OLED. Now, while a lot of people are excited about OLED, they're not necessarily excited about curved, and it's frustrating that to get one at the moment, you have to get the other.
Aren't the new models, though, ones that can be flattened out?
Oh, yeah, we haven't seen them in Australia yet, but they are coming. Now, yeah, it's basically, cloud goes up, cloud goes down, push the button sort of scenario where you can curve it back flat and then curve it in. And I would love to see some stats after 6 months on how many people have put it flat and then never bothered to change it again. I just don't think it's worth it. But I think OLED is where I'd rather be spending my money. I don't care about curve, I care about OLED, but to be forced to do the two together is really annoying. And I think I'd be surprised if they see much of a response to these, cloud goes up, cloud goes down, curved televisions. But when they can come out with some nice flat OLEDs at a decent price, then I think people will jump at it. But for now, OLED's so expensive that they want you to feel like you're getting the fashion luxury model, so they're curving it whether you want it or not. So along with curved screens, wearable tech is another hot topic at the moment. Now, Alex, Google has announced Android Wear. Where does that fit into the wearable tech big picture?
Well, Google wants its slice of the wearable tech market, and Android Wear is its play towards that. It's a new version of the Android operating system, not one that you're going to throw onto a smartphone or onto a tablet, but instead one that will go on wearable devices. So far, we've only seen 2 devices announced. They're both smartwatches, one from LG, one from Motorola, and they're designed to be a complement to an existing smartphone or tablet. So while they're running Android, so far what we've seen is largely things like Google Now for notifications to run on that smartwatch device.
So they're relying on the phone in your pocket for their internet access and their notifications and stuff like that.
That seems to be the case. I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions because these products, whilst they've shown them off, they haven't actually said, well, this is exactly how this bit works and this is exactly how that bit works, because, hey, you've got to build hype around these things somehow. The other way, though, that they've built a bit of hype around them, at least with Motorola, is that it's a fairly unique smartwatch. And the reason it's fairly unique is because it actually looks like a watch.
Ah, the old watch that looks like a watch routine.
Oh, they're sneaky at Google, they really are.
Yeah.
The Moto 360 has a round face, and that might not sound like a whole big heap and load, but when you think about it, a round face display is not something that you see all the time.
No.
They've built something that actually looks like a reasonably fashionable kind of device, and this is pretty clearly something that I think Google is concerning itself with in this wearable space. Not just, hey, what cool tech thing can these things do, but hey, how do we get people to actually want to wear them?
Now, we've seen a few others already. Samsung's got their one and a few others. What is it that you think will help Android Wear stand out from the crowd?
Well, I think it does come down, potentially speaking, to this fashion thing. If you look at the Moto 360, it looks like a fairly high-end premium watch, full stop. Yeah. You look even at the new Gear 2 or the cheaper one, the Neo, and they look like a smartwatch. I mean, I quite happily wear a first-generation Pebble on my wrist. And this is not the world's, best looking watch, I've got to admit. I'm fine with it, that suits my own personal sense of fashion. And obviously I am a fashion leader. How dare you, sir? But no, I mean, I'm fine with that, but I can totally get that there are a lot of people who would not be comfortable wearing something that looks so particularly techy and so particularly under-designed. And I think this might be a big area where wearables will either sink or swim. People actually wanting to wear them. It's the same thing as people not wanting to wear Google Glass because it looks bad, so Google goes running to the guys who make Oakley and Ray-Bans, as you mentioned in the news earlier.
Help us make it look cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, while Apple has been, its typical Apple-y self and not actually said anything, it's certainly at least applied for a whole bunch of patents that strongly hint that it's researching a smartwatch. At Apple, especially with Johnny Ive, in the position he's in, design is king. I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I've got no doubt Apple will come out with a smartwatch, if they do, that has strong design behind it, that is actually designed to look good, not just be smart.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that a lot of wearables to date haven't entirely taken on board.
Now, you mentioned Google Now before. I think that's the thing that stands out for me, because I don't want a watch that just beeps at me the same way my phone beeps at me to tell me all the things my phone's trying to tell me. What exactly is Google Now, and how would it work in a smartphone sort of scenario?
Okay, so Google Now is essentially Google's answer to Siri on steroids.
Okay.
In that you can talk to it and it will do natural language processing and all that kind of stuff. But it also ties into every other Google service and every little skerrick of information that you've handed over to Google, whether or not you've realised it or not. As such, it can be and they've offered it on Android phones for a long while now. You can get it on iOS, and they've actually just announced they're bringing it to the Chrome browser for the desktop as well.
Yeah.
So by the time these actual devices launch, people may well be a lot more familiar with it. The really interesting thing that I've found with Google Now when I started using it is that it is a bit arresting to have it kind of suddenly flick up. And the very first time I did it, it informed me how long my commute to work was going to be. It gave me the map of how I should drive home. I mean, not that I massively needed these things, but it makes you aware of how much information Google has. And the idea,
because
I guess,
you didn't ask for that, did you? It
not specifically. It just went,
want to know
I know all these details from all these individual things. You've calendared stuff. And you've, not that very many people update Google Plus, but maybe you've updated Google Plus. You've used Gmail. You've put these little crumbs of information everywhere. Google has tied them all together as it can, and it's gone, right, well, these are the things that will interest you. So if you did tons and tons of Google searches for a particular AFL team, for example, it would probably tell you when the next game was coming up as a Google Now card. That kind of thing as well is part of what's on offer. The idea being this comes up on your watch face screen, you don't have to fish around for the phone in your pocket. So in that sense, it's not terribly different to what a Pebble or the Gear smartwatches do. It's still an interface to the information that your smartphone is getting, but it's a more convenient and theoretically, I guess, more stylish one. And so we come to the end of another episode of Vertical Hold. I'm Alex Kidman, and I've got to go and learn how to curtsy to my betters.
Off with his head!